Another magical aspect of using waste yarn for grafting is it allows you to join edges with differing numbers of stitches to one another. I'm just tying on my waste yarn and I'm using a slip knot in my waste yarn just to snug it up to the edge, and if I wanted to make that more permanent I can just give it a little pull. That's known as a weaver's knot. It's a nice little way to join bits of yarn if you don't have a very long tail, and this can be undone later. So I'm ready to put my waste yarn on here, and I've got 15 stitches in this row, and I want to join it to an edge with 12 stitches. So I need to get rid of 3 of them. So as I work my first row of waste yarn, I'm going to pop in 3 decreases. So I've done 1. I think I'll do another one now. 2 decreases. And I'll put in a 3rd decrease. So now when I finished this row, I should have 12 waste yarn stitches. And now I can just continue as usual working on those 12 stitches until I've completed my waste yarn flap. Here is our completed decreased swatch, and you can see the decreased positions. There's 1, there's 2, and there's number 3. And the stitches are held one above the other, so there's a blue stitch on top of a blue stitch in that decrease, and they're held by the waste yarn. So here we are in our normal grafting situation, and I've begun the graft before I get to the decrease, and all I have to do now is just follow faithfully the waste yarn, which actually takes you into both of the 2 stitches that form the decrease. It takes you into the side of both stitches. We continue as usual. We take the yarn back where the waste yarn goes into both of the other sides of those decreased stitches and continue as usual. I'm showing this here in a stitch head to stitch feet situation, but this will work just as well in a stitch head to head situation. I'm going to begin as before, somewhere near the edge of the fabric. So this is my edge that was 15 stitches, and this edge has 12, and these stitches are all going in the same direction. So I'm going to begin on my top edge, and I'm going to follow the waste yarn around the base of stitch 2. I'm leaving enough tail to finish the edge. I'm doing my pinch test, everybody's happy. So now I want to go into stitch 2 and along to stitch 3 on this side. So my pink yarn goes down, around, do the pinch test upwards, everybody's happy. And now I can continue grafting. I'm going to complete this edge before I go any further. Although I'm entirely confident that I'm in the right position, it's always as well to check the edge before you proceed all the way across. So I'm following my waste yarn. I've gone around the 2 sides of the edge stitch there and back into the one remaining side of the edge stitch on the lower piece. So my edge matches just fine. Now we can tackle the decreases. Go back to the normal direction. Fold the 2 flaps in out of the way. And the next waste yarn stitch takes me into this stitch here and into 2 sides that form the decrease cluster. Then back around the next stitch on the top. If you haven't watched parts 1 and part 2, feel free to do so. It explains some of this. Now, On this second pass, I come back into both stitches. There they are, you can see the double, and the piece of waste yarn takes us into the double stitch and along to the next one. And now I just proceed as usual until I get to the next decrease position. I'm checking my size of my sewn stitches, and I'm nearly at another decrease position. So into this stitch, follow the waste yarn, under 2 stitch sides, back to the other side. So if you've gone into the decrease on one side, then the next time you come back to the edge, you should also be in to the other side of the decrease. So this is the rare occasion when you go under 3 bits of yarn rather than just 2 stitch sides. One last decrease. Back into the decrease. This can be done with stitches head to head or heads to feet. And there's my wobbly edge stitch. So I'm going to stretch out that pink yarn to pull that last blue stitch back into some kind of normality. Edge stitches are never happy stitches, they can't help it, they don't have a friend on the other side. In through there, back into the remaining side of that edge stitch, and our join is complete. Now I can remove the waste yarns. I'm going to remove the waste yarn on the new flap of knitting, the 15 stitch side. Just remember, when you pull that last row out, if you split any plies, then it will pucker. So just go steady on that last bit of unravelling. Let's check it again. All looks lovely. No wobbles. The decrease looks normal. It goes from 2 columns to 1. And now I can remove my initial piece of waste yarn. I've pulled out the tail where I fastened it at the start. Now I'm going to the opposite side. And I'm removing that last row of the initial waste yarn flap. Again, be careful in case you've split any plies, in which case you would cut the waste yarn. That should now drop away. There's our fabrics joined, and we have gone from 15 stitches down to 12 with perfect graft.